everybody. Good morning. I just want to thank the organisers, first of all, for what is always a very, very pleasant event. It's a pleasure to be back here in Sofia to talk about the effect of new gTLDs. We've just heard from Amadeo about new gTLDs, and it seems like it's a good transition to look at how new gTLDs are impacting what is a complex ecosystem, the internet governance ecosystem as far as ICANN is concerned. And as you can imagine, new gTLDs are having a profound effect on that ecosystem. So if I can just work out how to use this, which should be simple, but it's not. There we go. This is what I'll be talking about briefly this morning, and then hopefully we'll have some questions for both Amadeo and myself. Just first of all, wanted to look at the impacts of new gTLDs on ICANN and look at that through the GNSO perspective. As the introduction just mentioned, I was chair of the GNSO for up until October, and it's obviously a structure that has or stands to change a lot from new gTLDs. I'm also an employee of a registrar called NetNames, and as such I thought it might be interesting to finish off by giving you a look at how new gTLDs are also possibly impacting registrars with some interesting decisions that have come from the new gTLD programs that will change the lives of certainly registrars and a lot of other players as well. Look, it's working. Great. So, this is actually more complex than the GNSO structure, which is surprising to me, but the GNSO is ICANN's policy-making body for new gTLDs. What does that mean? The GNSO Council is the body that determines policy for generic domains such as .com, but it's the body that's also responsible. You can blame the GNSO directly for the new gTLD program. Anything to do with gTLDs, policy-wise, has to go through the GNSO. And the new gTLD program is the result of a policy recommendation that was forwarded from the GNSO to the board in 2007. After a good number of years of work within the GNSO structure. Now, while it was undertaking this work, the GNSO was also being restructured into the structure that you have in front of you now, which is a bicameral two-house structure designed to best represent the interests of the parties involved. I'm not going to go into much detail, I don't want you to fall asleep straight away, but just suffice it to say that there's two houses, as I've just mentioned. One for people that have direct contracts with ICANN, there's only two of them at the moment, two classes, registries and registrars. That's what we call the contracted parties house. As you can see, there's two groups in that representing the two entities I've just mentioned. The second part of the GNSO is the non-contracted parties house. Now this groups together a lot of divergent interests into two major groups called the commercial stakeholder groups, with lawyers, ISPs, people like that that have a professional link to ICANN's activities but no contract with ICANN, and the non-commercial stakeholder group with people representing internet users and other groups, and this has generated some problems already. We'll come to that in a minute. Now, as I've just mentioned, the GNSO was restructured recently into this bicameral structure, but the fun never stops at GNSO level, and there's a new structure, or review I should say, that is on the horizon for the GNSO. This is the first major possible change that the new gTLDs will bring. Because obviously any review of the GNSO now has to take into account new gTLDs. You can't review the GNSO and pretend that new gTLDs aren't around the corner. Now, when should this review take place? Well, you can see up on the screen the ICANN bylaws referring to the possible timeline. The board is slated to undertake a GNSO review every 5 years. But look at the words that I've underlined. Based on feasibility as determined by the board. Now, those words are very important because they give the board some leeway not to do the review in the time frame that is planned now, which is February 2013. Now, that's just next door. It's just tomorrow. And obviously, it's a little bit too soon if you want to gauge the impact of new gTLDs on the GNSO. Because as Amadeo told you a few moments ago, and I think he was being wildly optimistic, but that's the start, the new gTLDs will not start becoming a reality until, I'd say, early 2014, but certainly not before mid-2013. So you can see there's a link there on to ICANN's latest timeline for the new gTLD rollout. And there's no expectancy that the new gTLDs will arrive any time before halfway through next year. So even though some people are unhappy with the current structure of the GNSO, is it reasonable to start a review of the GNSO before new gTLDs are on the scene? Let's leave that question open for now. Let's look at what the review should look at. What can we expect from a new GNSO? Remember, this is the body that has brought us new gTLDs. So even though it's, I understand that it's slightly obscure in the way that it's integrated into the ICANN ecosystem, it is a crucial body, and it is having an impact on our everyday lives, and it will start to have a profound impact next year when the new gTLDs that were just described to you earlier on will start coming out. And it will also have an impact on your existing TLDs. If you guys all have .bg domains, you will be impacted by the fact that next year specific TLDs with specific themes will come out and will start to compete with your existing domains. So the GNSO's work is having an impact on all of us. And this is a question that many people are looking at now. What should the GNSO look like after new gTLDs? Obviously, it should take account of those. Now, you may have heard of this term, vertical integration. There was a board decision, an ICANN board decision, to allow registries and registrars to mix. I'm putting it in simple terms. Now, this may lead to, obviously, a need to look at the contracted party's house again, because the separation between registries and registrars will blur. And look at the other house, the non-contracted party's house. Many of those entities that are in there now may become registry operators. So suddenly, in the non-contracted party's house, you've got entities that have contracts with ICANN. What to do with them? And many people don't like the two-house structure as it is. And if you're looking at this, looking at the chart that I showed you earlier on, you may understand why. It's complicated. It's made for balance, but actually it means that often it's hard to break the status quo. It's hard to get consensus because both sides outweigh each other equally. So it's difficult sometimes to make progress. So some people don't like that. Now, obviously, new gTLDs are here. They're in our, very much in the collective psyche, and they've had an impact on the GNS already. One impact is the formation of new groups. The N tag is a group that represents new gTLD applicants And it's also already been created as part of the registry stakeholder group. It's got observer status there, so there's a new group coming in. New constituency requests are coming in, actually becoming more and more frequent. Just recently we've had some cyber cafes wanting to form a new constituency within the non-commercial stakeholder group. And the non-commercial stakeholder group says, but hang on, these are cyber cafes, they're in business. Why are they being forced onto us? I'm not about to answer that question, but just to show you some of the tensions that are coming to the fore as we proceed to look at new gTLDs coming on the scene. There's negotiations, and Thomas, who's in the room, will speak about the RAA negotiations. Negotiations on the registrar contract. Now these are obviously registrars that are currently already in business, but new registrars, if new gTLDs bring new business, they may bring new registrars, and they'll have to follow those contractual obligations as well. And registries are looking now, because of vertical integration, at being registrars. So I can give you two examples. Newstar, who operate .biz, and Nominet, who operate .uk, have both applied to become ICANN accredited registrars. And the registrars don't like it, surprise enough. So, as you can see, we've got a lot of things that are happening already, but there are things that I would suggest, this is my personal opinion, that the GNSO review should not cause. Obviously, I've mentioned the problems with the existing structure. It's important that the new structure does not cause a system whereby it's so complicated that the GNSO cannot function, or there's an upset between the two parties. You don't want to have a complex structure that scares everybody away. And one of the things that we've learned from the last review is that reviews take time and significant resources. They eat up the GNSO's resources, including the GNSO, just like any other part of ICANN, is made up of volunteers that are unpaid, that are giving up their free time for the cause. Some of them are obviously sent there by companies, others are doing it because they believe in their cause, but it's all volunteer time. And if you swap volunteers with review items, they can't do the real work. So this has to be taken into account. But new gTLDs will also bring new resources. The ICANN budget will grow significantly. It has already. I believe ICANN's very rich today with money that right now it's not using, but it's received from new gTLD applicants. There is a clear need for stronger compliance, because you have to make sure with all these new entities on board. Don't forget, we're going from a situation today where we have 22 gTLDs, 22 only. And this has been the case since the start of the internet. Tomorrow, if all the new gTLDs are approved, we could have 1,923 new gTLDs. That's the current amount that are still in contention, 7 having been withdrawn. So, more resources, more need for compliance, less clarity in who's what and who's doing what. You need to make sure that conflicts are scrutinized more carefully. This will all tax the volunteer model that we have at ICANN today. This will bring a lot of headaches to people that are currently working in this volunteer model, trying to cope with 22 gTLDs today. Once again, just remember the numbers we're going from and we're going to. 22 to 1,000, maybe, realistically 1,500. That is going to have a very, very big impact. So, just to summarize, the impact on the Council and the GNSO will be extremely strong. And ICANN as a whole will have strong, strong pressures on it, placed on it, with new gTLDs coming on stream. And it's not clear right now how everybody's going to cope. So, if you have any ideas, please, put them, I'm sure there's a box in the back there somewhere where you can slip your suggestions in there for the new ICANN CEO to enact some solutions. Now, just to finish off, let me take you through a look at the registrar perspective. Now, I mentioned vertical integration. This is the text from one of the board resolutions. What we've done here, in effect, is make registries and registrars almost the same entities. And this is surprising because we fought for years to get out of that situation. Initially, .com was a monopoly which was operated by the same entity doing the registry and the registrar business. Network Solutions had the registry and they were the only registrars. ICANN came online and did away with that monopoly. And everyone thought it was great. And that model was adopted everywhere. In CCTLDs, local country TLDs, as well as gTLDs. And then the new gTLD program comes online, and everyone thinks, oh look, there's a business opportunity here. Let's try and break that monopoly, and let's everyone do the same thing. I'd say that is a misguided push by registrars. And you have to be honest, registrars pushed for VI because they thought they could get business out of it. But they didn't understand that registries would get business out of it as well. And that possibly the world would be less clear for users because they didn't know exactly, who am I talking to? Am I talking to my registrar, my registry? Is it all the same thing? Do I have control? Now, there are other reasons for VI, including small registries that would not be appealing to large registrars and could not operate if they are not allowed to be registrars themselves. So it's not all simple, it never is. But, VI will bring new opportunities for registrars. They will allow registrars to, registrars have built great relationships with their customers, and VI will allow registrars to leverage those at registry level. But as I was just mentioning, there will be a lot of new registries, and these small registries will have to compete for registrar interests. Right now, as you can imagine, there's upwards of 1,000 ICANN accredited registrars and 22 gTLDs. So the balance of power is very much in the registry's favor. The registries tell us, do this, sell this, and we basically, we're happy to do it. Now, with new gTLDs, we could go to the registries and say, look, what are you going to do for me to convince me to sell your TLD? Remember, if registrars don't want to sell it, it doesn't get sold. So that business fails. So, anyone who's operating a registry in this room and wants to leave an envelope full of cash for me in my room, please do so, and I'll consider your bids. And that situation will be overturned. So that's an interesting development. Other implications of VI, there will be no change technically. Registries and registrars will have to be excellent operators. That will not change. But compliance, once again, that will change because there'll be more entities doing the same thing. There'll be more contracts. So ICANN will need to make sure that it has an effective compliance team looking at those contracts. And there's already been changes. The new CEO has elevated compliance to report directly to him. That's seen as a positive change. I would say, this, once again, all this is personal opinions, but I would say that's not enough. I would say the compliance team needs to be looked at very seriously because a lot is riding on those compliance efforts. So to finish off, I just want to reiterate that the current structure that we have today, and I would go much further than the GNSO. I look at the other SOs and ACs. That structure will have to change. I'd say it's become obsolete with new gTLDs. ICANN's customers, so the people that have contracts with ICANN, they will no longer be as clearly distinguishable as they are today. ICANN will have to cope with that, but so will all of us. Because we're all customers of, you know, any of you have a domain name, you're all customers of this system. Contract compliance will have to be more effective, as I've said. But really, the bottom line is, ICANN will have to show the world again and again and again that it deserves to have this faith placed upon it, that it can manage the new gTLDs, as it says it can. So that really is the challenge today. Thank you very much.